Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Well, hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
This episode is releasing in the United States on President's Day. So I'm not sure if you're listening to it actually on the holiday or after.
I actually hope not. I hope you are taking a break.
But that you come back to listen.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
you
okay.
Come tomorrow, okay.
Although not if they think listening is such a great pleasure. I say if you enjoy us, stay.
Maybe they do. I mean, we've had this discussion before where Cindy likes to do work on days off sometimes, and I'm like the opposite of that. I don't want to think about work. Okay, so maybe you're more like Cindy. and
you're just like, hey, I have time to listen today.
Yeah, I have time. I have more time today. Yeah.
This is the time of year where in the United States, you may have a day off for President's Day. You might have a 4-day weekend. I work with some programs that actually have a whole week, like a midwinter break. Yeah. I know in some areas of our country, they work on 3 different segments of the year and they get a break in between. And we just thought that this would be a nice time to talk about the rough landings that take place after any kind of break, whether it's a weekend, a holiday, a week off. And you don't even have to be in the United States to have experienced the rough landing that can take place.
The rough landing could be for adults and for children. It's for both. Listen, because I think sometimes coming back after vacation is rough. Okay.
I recently did that. I recently was on a vacation, which we thoroughly enjoyed. And I was feeling so peaceful and calm and put together. And then I sat down to start work again. I guess that's the only phrase for it. I sat down to start work again, and it was a rough landing because for me, I'm self-employed. I'm the only one who does my work. And so if I'm gone a week, well, there's a week's worth of emails and a week's worth of messages, and
no one was filling in for you. Yeah,
right. Which always makes it a rough landing. So I can relate to it. And I tried so hard to stay calm, like I think some children do, but it took a lot of effort that I'm not sure children can exert because their emotions are so big. And I'm an adult who sometimes has the wherewithal, not always, but sometimes has the wherewithal to take a deep breath and remember to have reasonable expectations of myself. Yeah. And I think when children are returning after having had a really great weekend or a fun holiday or just some time off, we have to remember that landing can be especially rough for them because they are really just so full of big feelings that tend to take over the thinking centers of their mind, and they can't necessarily talk to themselves and keep themselves calm and be rational with themselves. Right. As adults, how many times have you had to say to yourself, it's okay, it's going to be all right, I'll catch up. So what if I don't catch up all today? Or how many times have you had to have that sort of conversation with yourself that children can't really have with themselves?
Right.
So,
and that's me often. Well, especially like today is a Monday and I had a very, very busy weekend, and it's usually my weekends are I have time to relax and read my book and drink my tea and just chill. And I didn't have that this weekend. So when I came back to work on Monday, I was like, whoa, I'm here with no break, basically. Because even though I wasn't at work, I was still very busy the whole weekend. I had plans every single day. I didn't really have time. So that, I didn't realize how that would take a toll on me. I was just like, okay, I wasn't at work. Cool. That's great. But when I got back today, I was like, oh, I didn't rest all weekend. This is not good. And then on top of the children coming back on a Monday, where they're also like, oh, I didn't rest all weekend either. And now we're all in the same state, and it's that can be kind of hard, especially after the longer breaks, and I think for like adults, like we can easily sometimes get back in the swing of things. Like we have our routine of how we get to work sometimes. I mean, it's only going to take us a little bit of time to bounce back. But like when you have children and you have, say in your class, 15 children, and all 15 of them had an entirely different routine during this midwinter break or holiday break or weekend, and then they're all coming back and you're like, nope, this is our school routine, and they're all like, but I'm still on weekend mode, but all their weekend modes are different. That can be really hard to kind of wrangle them all back into school mode. Whereas like me as an adult, I'm like, it's just me, I only have to control me. But then for them it's like 15 different types of rough landings coming all together, and how to deal with all those 15 different rough landings might be kind of hard.
I think one of the missteps that adults take is that we think, okay, the children know the rules, the children know how things work here already. So they'll come in and they may be a little rough in the beginning, to keep using that word. They may be a little rough when they first walk in, but they'll get in the swing of things without putting any intentionality to it. When we start the beginning of a year with children, we are super intentional. We understand how we're going to introduce them to our rules, to the people, to the areas of the room, to the sort of routine we're going to have. And we are very, very, very intentional. And then once that's been introduced, I think we feel like, okay, that introduction is done and I never have to do it again. But I'm going to propose to you. I'm going to propose to you that after any extended break, and by extended, I mean 3 days or more, after any weekend where you see the children are coming back a little rough, any sort of situation that has caused the children to be upended in their emotions, or something's happened, that we need to take a step back and redo that intentionality from the beginning of the year. We need to sit them down and remind them of our routine and our rules and help them to recall it. They've experienced it, so we can say to the children, do you remember? Once they're verbal, do you remember what our rules are? Do you remember what we do during free play? And I would, throughout the day, do you remember how we do small groups? Do you remember how we do free play? And let them name it. Because I do believe that knowledge is still in them. It lives in them. They just have a hard time bringing it up. So they need our assistance, right? When we say to them, who remembers how we do this? Who remembers how we do that? And then there's also that whole piece where we work so intentionally in the beginning of a year to ensure that children feel belonging. And I think we have to think about how do we help children who are having a rough time coming back from the weekend, coming back from an extended break. How do we help the children once again find their place in this group and have a sense of belonging? I have found that music, singing with children is a wonderful way, rather than trying to get them to all sit in this perfect little circle in the car. Don't even worry about that. Just gather them with some singing of their favorite song.
Maybe some movement and dancing.
Help the children who are struggling a little more.
Because I think that's something that teachers do too, that they're like, no, we have to get straight back into the meeting and them sitting and this is it, or they'll never get back to it. And I think it's more like, nah. And I'm more of like a loosey-goosey kind of teacher. I'm like, nah, it'll be fine. We'll just dance today and play. And that's enough just to get that, and then maybe tomorrow we'll do a little bit of meeting and then dancing and then play. And then but I feel like there's some teachers are like, nope, we have to get right back into the routine, or they're gonna forget what it's about. And I'm like, nah, they're not gonna forget. And it's okay to have a day of like, we're just going to be here together today and just get used to being back at school and just enjoy each other's company. We haven't seen each other in a while, and let's just talk and play and laugh, and then the next day maybe do a little bit more. Like, it doesn't all have to be all or nothing kind of thing. Like, it's like an ease in to I specifically remember
when I was a classroom teacher, I specifically remember days, for whatever reason, where I realized this is not happening. The thing that I had planned or the way that I thought it was going to go is simply not happening. And I had a choice at that point. I could fight against that, or I could just loosen up my grip a little bit.
Yeah.
Do the children need to see the routine? I do think that they do. I do think that we need to attempt to walk through the routine. When children are struggling with walking through the routine, they just need our extra assistance. And then if things are completely falling apart, I somehow I would play a fun game with them and try and regroup.
Right.
So I would hesitate to fully abandon my routine, but I would also have expectations like, we're going to do large group time because that's part of our routine, but we're going to do an abbreviated version.
Yes.
Right.
Or like maybe, I would say not as, because I feel like when you force it, like, because there's some teachers are like, nope, we're going to do the full meeting instead of the abbreviated one, because I don't want them to lose track that it's supposed to be this amount of time. Now, you as a teacher are going to have a rough landing, I think, because you're going to get frustrated because it's not going your way. And now, and then the children are going to get frustrated because they're like, we're not ready to be back at the longer meeting time, like we're not there yet. So like, why not just meet in the middle? Do the meeting time, but do it abbreviated. Do the meeting time, but maybe add a dance to it. Do whatever it might be that you do, just do a little differently so that it's not as frustrating for everyone.
I also think about small groups. In the beginning of a school year, ideally, during small group time, you're taking small groups to the different areas of a room and you're playing with the children in those areas so that they understand how the different areas of the room are used and what's in those areas. And then we start to ease them in. After a couple of weeks, we start to ease them into, okay, now we're going to do these intentional small group activities in different spaces in the room, but I've planned these activities. It isn't so let's be introduced to the room based.
Right.
But there are times when I felt like as a classroom teacher, we are going to do a small group time because that's part of our routine. But today, these small groups are just going to be us playing with the children in the different areas because they have come back and seem to have forgotten the expectations in these areas.
Yes.
So we're going to go back and we're going to repeat that thing that we did in the beginning of the school year, that intentional introducing them to how things are done by modeling it.
Yes.
So again, small group still takes place, but it's modeling what to do in the room.
I do that often after a very long break, like your holiday break that happens, that's like 2 weeks long. I will do all the small groups like that again, because they do seem to forget how to play in the centers or how to clean up the centers or whatever it might be. And I will do that after a long break. Spring break, that's a week long. Holiday break, that's 2 weeks long. And then like sometimes if it's just a longer weekend break, we're like, oh, we'll just, touch on it, but don't have to go full force into it. But those longer breaks, I feel like you need to do that all over again. Like in January, when you come back after that December break, I would do that for the whole week, because I feel like they do forget, or they might remember how to play in it, but they don't remember how to clean it, or they might remember how to clean it, but not how to play in it. And like, it's just like, why not just go over it again? If they're 3, in my class, at least they're 3, they're younger kids. You can't expect them to remember everything all the time. They're 3. So just gentle reminders and modeling is, I think needed at that point, and I don't think there's anything wrong with going back to that after a long break.
This episode is coming out in February. You may have spring breaks coming to keep this in mind and to intentionally plan, how are we coming back? Not just, we're back, which I think a lot of adults are like, we're back. How are we intentionally going to address the needs of the children as we return from this long weekend, from the break? And there are going to be children who really struggle with separation anxiety, children who had hopefully a really good time, enjoyed whoever they were with when they weren't with us, and are really struggling with that separation anxiety. Separation anxiety in the age groups that this podcast talks about should be an expectation, particularly when children are coming back. And so we want to make them feel very, very nurtured and welcomed, and we need to make connection with them intentionally again. So if you've gotten to the point of the school year when we don't necessarily look up and greet every child by name individually, however you're greeting them, go back to doing it because they need
Yeah.
to feel that sense of belonging. I've seen in classes where they have, that chart where children can pick how they want to be greeted in the morning.
Yes.
And I've seen
Yeah.
people do that in the beginning of the school year and then just sort of abandon it when children are
Yeah.
just marching in, which is fine. They're marching in, they're happy to be there. They're
Yeah.
not looking for that. They're comfortable. It's fine as that sort of transitional tool. But I would suggest that you go back to it when you feel like some of the children are not feeling connected to us in this space.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
will make them feel connected to you? And what do you have from your experience with them already in the beginning of the school year that helps them feel connected to the space?
Right.
You have the advantage of that, which you don't have in the beginning of a school year. You have the
Yes,
advantage
yes.
from
You
now
now
to
know
the
them.
end of a school year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know them.
Yeah.
You know what
You know
captures
them
their
now.
attention.
Yeah.
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 You know their families. Hopefully you can partner with this. And I also, as just sort of a final note, I think it's very important to let families know to expect that just like adults have rough landings after a vacation,
Yeah.
children also sometimes have a rough landing after a weekend, a long weekend, or a longer break, and that it's okay. We're ready for it. We put intention behind that, just like everything else we do, and we're prepared to help your child connect to our space again. Let the families know that they need to maintain their routine for going back to school. Like if during the school week, they have a certain bedtime routine, a certain morning routine, they need to resume that before the children return, not after they return.
Not after.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
before.
the night before, the day before, start to resume that
before.
so that they are in that routine. Because if the routine carries, like we're going to go back to our routine at home. And so therefore it makes sense to them that we're going back to a routine in our early childhood programs. And don't assume families know that, folks. No one hands you an instruction manual with your baby. So
yes, that's true. Yeah.
we are educated about things like the importance of routine and returning to routine and how we can do that gently.
Right.
Families are not.
Right.
All right, preschool peeps. I hope that you have fewer rough landings because you put intentionality behind the return after having listened to this. And make sure that everyone in your class is on the same page, the teacher assistants, the paraprofessionals. Everybody needs to be looking at this return with intention and supporting the children who need the support.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, peeps, go think about all that, and we will catch you next week on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.